Let's talk about Dave Castro, the World Fitness Project, Torian Pro, and all the other CrossFit drama. And let's talk about Georgie. Man, I used to shoot all my videos in the backyard gym. I think I might bring it back in 2025. Let me know down in the comments if you want the videos in the backyard gym to come back. Okay, quick video before the Christmas craziness kicks off. The in-person semi-finals have been announced. If you've been following the new season structure, you'll know that they're going to be qualifying people through an online semi-final, but then also through a select few in-person semi-final events. Brother Georgie, breathing right in the mic, bruh. So you can see a list of the in-person semi-finals on the screen right now. We've got the Mayhem Classic back, that's pretty cool. Wadland Fest, never heard of it. French Throwdown, know about that one. The Rebel Renegade Games in South Africa, know about that one. Far East Throwdown's back. Syndicate Crown's back, and then obviously what I'm most passionate about, the Torian Pro is back. And then the Fitters Experience and Copa Sur. So that's 9 in-person semi-finals, and if you count up the amount of athletes they are qualifying, it is 16 men and 16 women. Now, this year they're cutting the games field down to 30 men, 30 women. So if they're qualifying 16 people through these in-person semi-finals, that means there's only 14 spots available for the online semi-final. That's a small number to be competing for, but I like it. Let's tighten this thing up. Let's have less spots available, make it more exclusive when it comes to the top athletes. That's the cream of the crop, and let's create some space at the games. You know, more time on the schedule, less athletes to deal with. I think it's a good thing overall to qualify less people, and we'll see how the online semis and these in-person qualifiers go. Now, one thing I read on the Torian page is that they'll be using the 3 weeks of the Open as their qualifier, but they'll be adding a 4th week. So it's going to be 4 weeks of qualifying events to get into Torian. So Torian will look at the 3 open workouts and then program an additional 4th workout, a 4th week. And that workout has nothing to do with CrossFit HQ. That is programmed by Torian. And I guess they'll look at what was missing or what kind of holes were there during the 3 weeks of the Open. And I imagine program something that's perhaps higher skill or higher load for those athletes that want to qualify for the Torian Pro. Some other interesting things I saw on the outline is that they have the right to invite any athlete they want that they feel like performed well at an online qualifier or during the online semi-finals. So let's say, for example, James Sprague misses out on those 14 spots for the online semi-finals and doesn't qualify through any of the other in-person semis. Torian has the right to just go, you know what, we're going to invite James Sprague to come and compete at Torian and give him a shot at the title there or at the qualifying spot. It kind of gives me 2019 Hunter McIntyre vibes, where Hunter just got an invite straight to the games. It's one of those ones where, you know, the event just gets to choose who they want to invite. There's no, you know, obviously there has to be some kind of rhyme or reason, like the athlete has to be a notable athlete and has good performances, but still it's a freebie, it's a free gift to come and compete. I don't mind it, let's go, why not? They still have to be good enough to beat the people there, and if they do, they still have to be good enough to beat the people at the games. So ultimately, if they're good enough, they'll make it. But what do you think of that? What do you think of the events having the ability to invite people to their event without them qualifying for that? And then lastly, I saw that they are making spots available for past champions. So if you're a past champion of that event, you can come and compete. So we may see someone like a Brandon Swan or a CJ Walker back in the mix at the Indies at Torian. I'm not sure if this is true for all the in-person semis, but I read that on the Torian website, so yeah, exciting times. So let me know down in the comments, what do you think about the online semi-final events that have been announced? Is there a good mix? Is 9 enough? What do you think about the fact that that only leaves 14 spots for the online semi-finals to qualify people to the games? Is that enough? Not enough? And lastly, let me know what you think about the events being able to invite any athlete they want that they feel is worthy, or inviting back the past champions. Dave Castro made an appearance on the Semifinals podcast this week, and then this morning released one of his week in review videos. He hasn't been on social media that I've seen anyway since the games. He's been pretty quiet, so he's back out there. I really liked the interview of Semifinals. It was Dave's very not emotional, not too animated. He's very like just placid and, you know, matter of fact, and I really like that about him. You know, he doesn't over sensualize situations or information. I appreciate that about him. Sevan asked him a few tough questions about Lazar and what happened in the games, and He wasn't ready to answer those. But overall, I thought it was a really positive interview for him. And the most interesting part about the whole interview for me was him talking about the CrossFit Games not being what people want it to be. There's so many stakeholders now that, that want it to be a certain thing. And Dave mentioned the fact that the games kind of presented in the early days, so 2010, first time in California in a big stadium, it kind of presented bigger than it really was. You had these amazing looking athletes, you had this big stadium and the crowds, but really the sport was not quite ready perhaps for that growth or for that stage. And he mentions in the interview that perhaps the game should have stayed a bit more grassroots for a bit longer. And even now, the expectations from athletes, coaches, sponsors, it sounds like he thinks the expectations are perhaps for it to be something that it isn't. It is still a community event driven by the affiliates. And for people to want to professionalize it and take it bigger and better. We've all heard the comments that people want the sport to be more professional, perhaps for it to be like the tennis tour where there's 4 majors or 2 majors a year or all that kind of stuff. And it seems like Dave seems to think that, hey, it's actually not there yet, and that perhaps there isn't actually a market or an appetite for that this one combination of the CrossFit Games once a year is kind of where it's at. That's enough. And that brings us to the next topic of discussion, which is the World Fitness Project, Will Morad's World Fitness Project. It's a new league that's kicking off in 2025, and essentially they're signing 20 male athletes and 20 female athletes on a signed contract. And what that means is that these 20 athletes get automatic entry into the major events, the 3 major events that'll be happening throughout the year. And then everyone else gets to kind of compete for these 10 challenger spots. There's 10 challenger spots that will allow 10 athletes to take a pro card, or a signed spot off one of the current athletes. So for 2025, they're just handing out the 20 signed cards, pro cards, and then you got to then earn it back for 2026. So those 20 athletes have to compete at the 3 major events throughout the year and show that they, gain enough points through those 3 events and earn their card for the 2026 season. So great concept, very much like golf, where you've got, a set amount of pro cards and everyone else tries. Hello. So yeah, in 2025, we will have another league. Honestly, I'm all for it. If you look at golf, you have the introduction of the Live League, and you have these players that left the PGA Tour to go to Live to follow the money. The money was huge, and obviously the money won't be anywhere near that, and with this new World Fitness League. But still, I wouldn't blame athletes. I would want athletes to go and, go where the money is. Go for it. And let's see what happens. I think for the moment, it is not exclusive. So athletes can be signed to this league, but still compete in the CrossFit Games season. That might change in the future, and that will make it more interesting. But in the meantime, if you can compete in both the CrossFit Games season and get paid to be a signed athlete on this league, absolutely go for it. Why not? Whether this league will survive and thrive, we're going to have to just wait and see. But I like the concept, and competition is always great when it comes to business. It's always good to have a rival. It makes everyone step up and do better. So whether there's an intentional response from the CrossFit Games or not, I think subconsciously, the games level will rise just because they know subconsciously there's another league that's starting up. Not that they have to be threatened whatsoever, but I think as human beings and people that are competitive in business, you can't help but to step your game up to outperform the competition. So I think it's a really good thing for the sport and for the space. So let's wait and see. So far, they have announced a few signed athletes. They've announced Chandler Smith, Alex Kazan, Brooke Wells, Pat Vellner, and Yola Holster. So a few big names in there. Obviously all top 10, top 20 athletes over the last few years in the CrossFit Games. Like I said, there'll be 20 male and 20 female athletes. I'm sure they'll keep rolling out the announcements over the coming days. The real question is, will these athletes still compete in the CrossFit Games season, or will they just solely focus on this new league? We'll see. Coming back to Dave's interview on the Sevan podcast, one thing I thought of was the way that Dave talks about the CrossFit Games. He talks about it in a way as if he owns it, which he doesn't, right? Yes, he started the CrossFit Games, but he's never owned, the CrossFit Games isn't a separate company that is owned by anyone. It is owned by CrossFit Inc. And so obviously CrossFit is now owned by private equity, and for them, the CrossFit Games to them, to the private equity guys at the top, to them is literally an item line. Like they're going through the finances, there's this item line called the CrossFit Games. They've got zero attachment to it. If that thing's losing money, there's nothing stopping them from just going, oh, we'll just cross out that item line. Let's get rid of this thing that's losing us money. And so, we often kind of get romantic about the fact that, Dave started this thing on the ranch and it's his baby. But in reality, he doesn't actually own the CrossFit Games, and he doesn't have the say whether it goes ahead or doesn't go ahead. And so I love how protective he is over it, and I love how invested he is in it, and I do think he's the best person to run it. End of the day, private equity owns the CrossFit Games, not Dave Castro. And that's why if I was an athlete, there would be no way that I would be putting all my eggs in one basket, putting all my hope and my faith in the CrossFit Games continuing or being the thing that's going to be my career for the next 5 to 10 years, because there is no guarantees. That thing can be scrapped at any moment. Obviously, it's a great thing to be a CrossFit Games athlete. It's an admirable thing. It's a lot of hard work. You had Caroline Lambre, who's Jeff Adler's coach and partner, on the Coffee Wads and Pods podcast recently, and the way she was talking was, there's athletes like Jeff that are making this their living. They're making the CrossFit Games, or the season and the journey to the CrossFit Games, and making that their living. And I just think, man, that's a scary thing, knowing that the person who runs this doesn't see it the way you see it. Like, they don't necessarily want the event to become what you think it might become, or what the potential is. And on top of that, not to mention that it's owned by private equity who could just scrap it at any stage. So I understand that athletes are so invested in the CrossFit Games and becoming the champion, but surely, you got to think outside that scope of just being a CrossFit Games athlete. What else can you do to earn a living or set yourself up for the future? Just something I thought of when Dave was talking. I was like, man, this guy talks about the games as if he owns it, which, as he should. Of course, we want him to care as much as he does, but at the end of the day, it's not his. And to finish today's video, I wanted to bring your attention to a yearly awards that Pedro organized through social media, did a poll, and then did a great video today going through the results. But essentially did like an end of year awards in different categories, and it was really entertaining. I'll link the full video below, so go and watch that. But spoiler alert if you don't want to know the results. But here are some of the categories and who won those. So best female athlete for the year, no surprise there, Tia-Clair Toomey. Best male athlete was voted Dallin Pepper. Best coach was Matt Torres from Brute. Best athlete social media was actually won by Ariel Lowen. The best broadcast was won by Rogue Invitational. The winner of the best podcast for the year was, no surprise, the Sevan podcast. The best podcast episode was actually by Pedro, Coffee Pods and Wad, and that was the interview with Pat Vellner and Brent Fikowski. Best YouTube channel was won by Hiller, well deserved. Very surprised to even see my name on there. I'm coming for you next year, Hiller. The best YouTube video of the year was also won by Andrew Hiller, and that's the 48 hours with Haley Adams. So yeah, a few fun categories there. Go and check out the whole video and the breakdown of all the standings. But hey guys, have a fantastic Christmas. I'm off to play golf now. I'm already getting dressed for it. So yeah, hope you have a fantastic Christmas with your family and friends. And I will see you next Tuesday, I guess. I don't even know what day. Is that the 1st, the 2nd? Might be the 31st. I'll try and put out a video next Tuesday. And we'll try and get back training in the backyard gym. Haven't done anything since High Rocks. It's been a week and 2 days. I've done nothing. So I'm just going to enjoy Christmas and then set some new goals, new targets, and start training again after tomorrow. Okay, stay sexy, keep roaring love. Love you heaps. Mwah.